Okay. Great. Good morning, everyone. Thank you to those of you who are joining us for the Efficiency Workshop studying migration at Checkpoint High School. And hopefully we can help you things that will be beneficial for your state efficiency application that's going on to national. So basically when we start our meeting, let's talk just a little bit about why we're here. First of all, state winner. So again, congratulations. And that's just kind of the first step we're looking to do now. So really we want to focus on you representing Illinois to the very best of your ability. And of course then you want to try and win at the next level. So that's kind of our goal, is to take what you've done so far and use it to catapult you into the next level and there. If you become a national finalist, there are several opportunities for you. There's dangling in front of you. $500 does go to each national finalist, as well as a nice class. And the super national finalists will be invited to come and compete at national conventions. So you go for interviews there, where from that they would then pick the national winner. The nice thing about that is get some interview experience at the next level. But for Illinois, you're still familiar with the interview process. And I feel like if we got you to be a national finalist, Illinois people are going to stack up very well because we know how to interview here in Illinois. Also, national finalists are eligible to apply for an international travel experience, which is a cool thing if you like to travel. And it is free. So if you would like to travel internationally for free, a little extra effort into this application. Let's see if we can get you to be a national finalist, and you may get to go somewhere. Did I mention again? It's free. So it's gone for a number of years to Costa Rica. I've had several students. In fact, my husband and I also went on that trip to Costa Rica. That's actually my son there. Enjoying some fresh pineapple and beautiful scenery. This coming summer, they are transitioning that trip, and it's going to Ireland this year. And I have 2 students who will be traveling to Ireland this summer. Again, they are mentioned for free. So there are lots of great students who want to do really well. You can buy decided to apply to go on these travel experiences. A limited number of them, the cost is getting to do.
I am Nicholas Close.
A little bit of fun.
Can you hear it?
Yes.
Great, thanks.
All right.
What's that?
Housekeeping items about the application itself, and I think most of you, if I think kind of looking over your shoulders here, most of you are at least in the manager or have been. Make sure that you have between the boxes in days to say exactly something I students was it last year or the year before, and I learned that the hard way. So make sure that as you're moving between boxes and tabs, key for that, and that will allow it to stay. All right, let's talk just a little bit about your application itself and the application that you're filling out. First of all, if you do your application, stay on the top of the text you are feeding in. Make sure that everything, including your pictures, is of that application. I know some of you in here have things that are
anything, I'll dismiss the
with other types of essays.
Oh, that's
not want to talk about. You want to highlight that you need to focus on exactly what you're doing.
Try telephone.
I have to do this.
It does anything.
Levi Brown.
Hello?
Thanks, Levi. Yep, can you hear it?
Yeah.
What's that?
Great. All right. We've had somebody come in the workshop, and Dinah's going right back to it, so we're good.
All right. So as we were saying, several of you I know have things that are related to your FAE, but they're a different project area. Make sure that you just don't muddy the waters and make the judges try and guess about what your FAE is, because it's not going to end well. Spell it out very clearly. In fact, I have this picture up here to remind you, or remind me, 2 years ago now, we just application judging at national level was really where the national. Wonderful project. It's very maintenance, and actually I think similar to what the students did. Sometimes my factor, some of the I worked for, and so we were. And as a result, it's not work out very on what your project is. That's what you really need to focus on. I do not make There it is. I'm going to talk about the gray area just a little bit.
Austin Brockman.
Good morning. So there's not always a right way and a wrong way, but some of you may be aware that some of these proficiency award areas have a little bit of gray area. There are some of you that have FAEs that are going to be entrepreneurship competing against placement or vice versa in a combined area. Some of you have maybe an FAE that could have competed in 2 or 3 different proficiency award areas because of the nature of the beast. All right, and you chose one particular area. That is the way that you need to develop your application, is the area that you chose. Get off. Easy to look at. What? Not what I mean. You need to help. But some of you have some things that are maybe a little unique and different. And then
what are we watching? Anything important? Yeah.
You guys hear, if you can, please mute yourself. You can hit mute. If you're unable, please mute yourself.
The application, and we were concerned about the judges realizing that project, so we really hit home on that. And in doing so, I think we can that
If you're on the phone, please mute.
Right.
Proficiency award area, your application. Very nice. I do a variety of kind of hear the way that you present your program, that there is no doubt. So that's we have a workshop And I feel like
we'll talk about all that at the end.
yes.
But I don't
Is there one?
You're like, I don't know. What?
That's the animal. That's the animal. They can't have anything about what they do with the honey beyond giving the sick, and that turns into egg processing. And that person, that's you. So if you are in the area, you have one, like sales, you may get it's not your sales, that's sales. But if you talk about making stuff, you're in processing land. It's the gray area we're talking about. And I know there are a lot of teachers that don't agree with that philosophy, and they'll want to argue with that. And I'm all for it. Nope. Once the honey is harvested, that's you. Beyond that, honey. So that's good example of one. Unfortunately, the tougher ones, the even more gray areas, I can't give you examples of until we see it on paper. So make sure you do stay within that. Yeah, unfortunately, yes.
So nothing more heartbreaking than to go to all work of, finishing record book, winning section, winning district, winning state, putting all the time into your application for national, and then having them say, doesn't fit, sorry. Just be super cautious about that because it's a heartbreaking lesson to learn. All right. So timing, let's talk a little bit about that. Amy? We are currently well into 2017. Right? This is nearing the end of May of 2017. Not in spite of the fact that this application was as of December 31st, 2016 and prior. Do not include anything about 2017 in your application. I do not say, in January of 2017, I plan to do this because blah, blah, blah. December 31st, 2016, right? If you reference to 2017, it's not going to end well, right? In the past, it has generated a participant rating. I don't think any of you came here today to be a participant. Came here to want to be successful. And Mrs. Bunselmeyer wants you to be successful, and I want you to be successful. So we have to be very careful about this because they are very stringent on that rule. The place where we saw a lot of it is in efficiencies. So when you're saying, I started out at this level and then I advanced to this level, when you show your most advanced, whatever it is you do with your project, it's references 2016. It's numbers of 2016, right? Maybe great things have happened so far in 2017. So if so, maybe they'll get, if you can be a finalist, the judges sometimes ask, hey, what have you been doing this year? That's great, but don't put it on your paper in your application, right? Try not to reference your pre-application period by year. So don't say, oh, way back in 2012 when I joined 4-H. Say, when I was younger, I did this. Because when you start getting into those very early years, there's a cutoff point in that as well. So I know a lot of you may have started something when you joined 4-H, and that's all well and good. And so when you start spouting out those earlier years, referenced by the year itself, then the judges are calculating back, and if that year is in your eligibility time period, it just makes things more difficult. So try when I was younger and don't go back a long time in years. All right. So let's move forward. So just like anything that we are shooting for, we need a target. We need to know exactly where it is that we're headed, and so we need to use the rubric to guide you. I think all of you who showed up here today have some papers that I gave you. Yes. All right. This is a hard copy of the rubric that the judges will use to evaluate your application at the national level. And you have access to this. I'll show you where there's lots of different material that you have access to. But this is exactly what they score you on. So I would recommend, if you have not seen this before, use this to guide you through your application, because you can see what they're putting a lot of emphasis on, exactly how they're scoring it, what ranks as high points, mid points, and low points, and that sort of thing. So use this to help you, because that is exactly what the judges use. There is no, they don't keep anything secret. This is the rubric that's used. They share it with you and all of your competitors, so use it as a valuable resource. So I'll say if I were scoring this and I'm reading my performance review, does it, and then look at what you want to aim for high points. If you're like, oh, well, I think I could make it into midpoints, then you probably better revise it. And you always need to shoot for your highest number of points possible. Mm-hmm. Well, and we talked briefly about the interview before you arrived, but the only thing they're going to see from you so far is this paper application. They're not going to see your record book. They're not going to get to meet you unless you are one of the 4 national finalists. This is what we have to do to get you to score well enough to be a national finalist. And so it is all about the application at that point. Okay. If you are fortunate enough to be named a national finalist and all the travel opportunities and everything that I talked about, then we will work with you. We're going to do that again. Yes. We'll work with you to prepare you for that interview at national and the things that they're looking for there and so on and so forth. So it's kind of a one step at a time thing. But there is no interview if we don't do what we're doing today well. All right. So use the rubric. I'm not going to read it to you, and we're not going to spend a lot of time taking it apart right now. I want to give you some other pointers and things, and then you can kind of dissect it as we go. All right, there are 4 different rubrics. Make sure that you are referencing the correct one. If you are competing against people who are entrepreneurship and you're entrepreneurship only, then that's the rubric you should have. If I gave you the wrong one, let me know. We don't have any agri-sciences in the room. Okay. Placement. If your project is placement and it is an area that is only placement, then that's the application that you use. If you're in one of those areas that have placement and entrepreneurial students mixed, forage, fruit, ag-com, those sorts of things, where there's no distinction in different areas for placement and entrepreneurial students, you need the combined one. It's a combined as it possibly goes. So make sure that you are referencing the correct one. All right. Let's dig into the application just a little bit, and I'm going to assume that many of you have at least looked at the application enough to be familiar with some of the parts and pieces of it. But I want to talk about the performance review just a little bit. Use all of the space that they give you. This is all the judges have to learn about you and your project. So this is not, we're not all about brevity, one line. Use the space to tell your story. It is a good idea if you need to explain something further. They don't give you all that much space. You can refer to photos. You get 6 pictures, and we're going to talk about pictures in more detail here in a little bit. But you can talk about, let's say, the bees. I did something or other with my hive. And if you have a picture of whatever it is you did with your hive, that's photo number 1, let's say, you put parentheses, see photo 1. And then they're going, oh, that's what they mean. The old picture is worth 1,000 words thing. And so that will help you in your explanations. You can refer to photos. So, for example, you just put it right in here. in the text. This particular student, this was my poultry and ag sales person, and he actually had 2 photos that were talking about his technology and his working with customers and so on. All right, there's a part in there that asks you to identify a challenge that you had and what the solution was for that. And so one way that you can do that to help kind of really make it stand out for the judges to find quickly is identify it, challenge. So you can't really change fonts and things, but you can capitalize. So here's the challenge if I'm a judge, and here's what the student did to solve that. So that way problem solution is very clearly able to be identified quickly for a judge. Right? All right, let's talk about the performance review. I think you have something else happening in there. Yeah. In your performance review, be creative. Go ahead with the next thing. If I had $1 for every time I read, ever since I was little, blah, 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 I probably go out for lunch today and then some, right? So you need to try and be a little more creative than that if you can. You want to snag the judge's attention, right? They're there for 6 days reading applications from like 8 or 9 a.m. until 5 or 6 p.m. And the most exciting thing besides reading a good application is mealtime for them. So you need to nab their attention, right? So this particular student talks about I don't know if you can read that, and the people online, I'm not sure if you can see that, but it says, from an early age, I had an interest in farming. Each year, I eagerly looked forward to Christmas when I got more components to my growing toy farm set. I farmed on the setup every day. And then I went into talking about how their people did not have a farm, and gosh, they were interested. And so now the judges are like, oh, man, this kid lived and breathed this stuff. What all they do? So find some way to kind of creatively introduce your story rather than, well, ever since I was little, I've liked to blah, blah, blah. All right, Amy, next, please. Spelling, grammar, hints, all of that is important. As many different sets of eyes as you can get to see your application, the better off you'll be. Other teachers, sometimes they can think of another way to word things, especially ways to more concisely word things, because a lot of times you get going on what you want to say, and now I'm out of space. So you have to, don't get rid of the concept, find ways to reword what you're talking about so that fits in the space. The word that is oftentimes used when we don't need it. I always tell my students in any kind of writing, whether it's proficiencies or an essay or whatever, look at that word that and think, if I got rid of it, what would that sound like? And read the sentence without it. Usually it's just as good, if not better. So there's 4 characters that you can get rid of, and in good writing, you really don't use that word anyway. So again, proofread, 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 proofread. I have a former student of mine who served as a judge in National Swine. This is years ago now. And he came to me and he said, Ms. Flushing, look at this application they sent me. This person bought a new gilt, and it was G-U-I-L-T in the application. It didn't really make a lot of brownie points with my student who was a judge at that time, because he was in an organization that was very involved in that particular FAE area. So you're forming the judge's opinion of you. You're forming their overall concept of you and your program. And if you can't even spell the words that have to do with your FAE correctly, probably not going to bode quite so well. All right. Income and expense summary. This is going to be for those of you who are entrepreneurial. Amy? Advisors in the room that have been at this a few years. Think of this as that old state degree application, page 8A, the one that we all loved so much. which is now just called income and expense summary because the pages are not necessarily numbered. So you guys who are entrepreneurship only, this is a page that you are going to work on. I want to caution you that those are income and expenses that have to do with this SAE only. Those of you who trade labor and have things mixed around and kind of intertwine different SAEs, I caution you, be very, very careful that you record only the information that is doing with this SAE question. Good. That's a great question. So if you are entrepreneurial, even if you're in a combined area, you're going to record the entrepreneurial financial things about your project on this page. And there's a place, I do really like this, there's a place where you indicate what percent of your program is entrepreneurial and what placement. So for those of you who are in a mixed area, I'm speaking to you now, there is a place where you will use a little slider and indicate what percent of your program is entrepreneurial and what percent is placement. And you can be mixed yourself. It defaults to 50%, I think. It's got a default in there. So you need to look at that and make sure that you just go, oh, I don't know what that is, and move on. You need to slide it to exactly how your business is set up. But if you have anything entrepreneurial, you'll be recording on this page.
And for placement, if you wanted to count all of your unpaid hours and paid hours, you have to be 100% placement.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yes, sir.
So, you've done her great applications on the
Yep. Yep. Yes. Yep. Oh, it is. Mm-hmm. Without a doubt. So again, only this SAE. All right, another thing that we need to maybe spend a little bit of time on is current and non-current inventory category. It is absolutely critical to get your things in the correct category. And this is also matter, just mentioned not too long ago about we may have different opinions as to how things should go. But I'm going to tell you, national opinion is the one that matters when we're looking at your application. All right? So you may have the best philosophy on how this should go, or your ag teachers may have their own philosophy. Most of us do. But we got to get it right according to the way national wants it, or it's, again, not going to end well. So if they are asking about your current inventory, you're looking for your assets that you can convert into cash within 1 year. We're going to categorize some things here in a second. So some examples that you might have. It might be seed. It can be hardwood seed. It might be soybean seed. It doesn't matter. I have a student, frozen chicken breast is one of his current inventories. Market hogs, any kind of market animal for that matter. You have market lambs, if you have feeder pigs, if you have steers, those are all current inventory. Feed goes there. Gasoline, if you're a mechanic, or if you're, say, a crop or horticulture kind of person, and you buy gasoline for your tiller or your whatever, and you've got 20 gallons of that left over, that is a current inventory item. Non-current is going to be things that are going to be more than a year in your holdings in your project, and it can take longer than that to convert to cash. Your breeding animals go here. Right? So if you have cows, if you have sows, if you have ewes, if you have breeding rabbits, so does, they go there. If you have a lawnmower, if you have any of these big ticket items, equipment and such, buildings, they all are non-current. So it's important that you get them in the right category. All right, so let's see how we can do. Amy, all right, what about a pure bed Duroc sow? Where does she go? Current or non-current? I'm not hearing you. Non-current. All right, she's a breeding animal. How about 5 gallons of diesel? Current, right? How about 5 pounds of cat food? Current. How about a hay baler? Non-current. All of your equipment goes there. All right. How about the collar for the dog? Small animal. Current. Okay. How about a walk-in flower cooler? Maybe you've got some sort of flower enterprise. Non-current. Any kind of equipment. Okay. And how about, speaking of the flowers, and the 10 dozen carnations that go in the cooler, what are the carnations? Current. Okay. A little bit more on non-current assets. If you buy a breeding animal, I don't care how big or small, they must be depreciated. And that is, according to Jim Casey, who was their financial person, when we were ready to start judging, the first thing that they did was introduce him, and he kind of went through a little financial record-keeping spiel for the judges. And this is a direct quote from him. Not all of your ag teachers agree with this philosophy. I'm sorry. Yeah, we have to do things the way that National wants them, or they're not going to score your application well. Right? We have to jump on board with it. So breeding livestock is depreciable also. Right? And I have a little story. We had a student, not at my table, but at another table during national judging, that sold these insects here to pet stores, who then turned around and sold them for whatever creatures, ethos, I don't know. Anyway, that was their FAE. Very creative, very different. That's great. The student bought some new female cockroaches to add to his breeding herd. They were not recorded in depreciable breeding animals, and therefore suffered for that. So I know that's a stretch in many of our minds, but if you buy breeding creatures, they're depreciable, they're non-current.
And that goes to a point. A lot of times people will think that a small animal, rabbit, fish, whatever they may be, because they're small, or you think they have a shorter lifespan, you think that they're current inventory. But if they are breeding, it is non-current. I've had that conversation with National FFA more than once. So it's not the size or their lifespan that makes them current or non-current. It's what they do, their purpose in life. And so if they are breeding, regardless of size or lifespan, they are
the category.
Yeah,
they're breeding,
exactly.
breeding creatures. Yes. That would be true. Yeah. Purchase. Yeah, right. But that breeding animal that you raise is so non-current when you're categorizing your asset. Yeah. Question in the back.
Okay, what about lane?
Yeah, because what they're producing
is the egg.
And that is current inventory. But I would say the N is non-current.
We might want to get a little clarification.
I email that, and then we will pass that along to make sure we get national certification.
And, we can argue the pros and cons and what the IRS thinks and so on and so forth all day long. But the point of the matter is we're here for a reason today, and that is to make a competitive national application. So, yeah.
So what if she purchased and doesn't have not reading out of the show.
Okay, so it's going to need to convert over, Mrs. Lunsley, you want to address that.
So she'll come into the book, and then she'll have to be dropped down into non-current. She'll come into the book, and she could.
There's a couple different ways that you can read it. Yeah, there's a couple different. You can either. Right. Well, if you bought her and you were going to keep her, put her in the breeding herd, you could just put her in as a purchase.
Breeding, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, if she's purchased. Mm-hmm. 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 Okay, so then the rest of them would be sale of non-current assets.
Yeah.
White, page 1. They would be, yeah.
If she stays in non-current and is breeding, she would have to be. And so
like on the state degree app, there's that place to transition.
Yes, if we, well, and we don't, we can pull up an application, but when
We can help you with that on an individual basis when we're done, too, because that happens. I get that. My own kids had that.
Right. So, and like with a heifer, when she's born and she's your current inventory and you hold her back, you can increase her value of what she was from a heifer when she then goes back into your herd. You can increase that. You have to show, it has to be a wash. You have to show what you're going to, I can't remember the word, but what you're going to increase her by, and then you have to go put that in non-current, but then she still has to depreciate over time. Right. But she can increase in value as long as you show where that happens.
Current.
From
when
current.
She's current.
When she's current.
Right.
When it's so when she gets transferred, she can increase in value, and then her non-current value is increased from that, and then but then that non-current has to depreciate over time. So.
Right. That's great. When he, well, and we can deal with individual things, but you know, the amount that he got for that half a sale or half interest is going to be, she would be non-current, right? So that would be non-current sale, half of her, and then leave the other half. Well, let's look at that one individually so that.
Oh, do you mind if I open up?
Is it,
if I do,
are they creating on the website? Okay, so your pleasure animals, so you got geldings and things, those are going to be covered. And your bears that are breeding purposes and things are going to be non-depreciable.
Even though you've got no minor amount. Wow.
So on the application, when you're looking at the income and expense statement, that's where we're talking about these transfers. And the transfer is 1F to 4B, and that's where she can increase in that heifer, goat, sow. She can increase in value from current to non-current, but then once she's in non-current, she's got to depreciate.
My advice to you on that is do what you want to do as long as you can rationale and talk about it, but be consistent throughout your book.
My understanding is
You do. I cannot tell you how many, and Amy can attest to this, how many family discussions around our supper table when my kids were in school that we had about that, because yeah, we did. We had it was like breeding females and then breeding females and then market animals. Just try and be realistic and try and be consistent.
Consistency is the piece.
Yeah.
That will throw a red flag to whoever's judging in national, and national will tell them that's a red flag. So that they'll be directed as judges to be looking for those type of things. So consistency is most important. Realistic is also very important too. But if you believe a horse is worth something, then you can sell it for that. And that's, you know, they can't question because you probably have proof or evidence that you have in the past. So you can, you know, use that reference point. I use horse as an example because that's one is a hotly debated topic.
And there are.
And I know nothing about horses, but I know.
And I kind of know what, because we have a similar thing, and keep in mind I'm married to a banker for crying out loud, a very conservative banker, and then I have a very opinionated son, and then Amy and I, it was.
And you're not opinionated at all.
Yeah, Amy and I are not. So, all right, so yeah, it'll be very interesting discussion, and you just have to come to an agreement as to how you want to do that, be consistent, and move forward. All right, speaking of moving forward, one other thing. And Mindy mentioned this. I want to make sure you caught this. Even if you're transitioning something from current to non-current, once something is a non-current inventory item, you cannot go, that's worth more now. You cannot appreciate its value. It depreciates. right? So that's another one of those big red flags that you can't do that. It could. Current can appreciate. Yes, current can appreciate. Current cannot. So again, the correct categorizing of your assets is critical.
What looks best? She had a horse she bought at 4,000 for the state degree. Kept it at 4,000 already, and when she sold, she sold it like that.
Okay.
And we did that. The mash appreciated a little bit along, leave it at 4 and sell it.
I'd leave it the way it is.
Exactly.
Yeah, do it just like it happened. Yep. All right, a couple more things about non-current. Talking about depreciation, we're not about our taxes on this. We're not going to use IRS depreciation methods. Good old straight line is what we're looking for, which is what Easy Records defaults to. That's the only thing you can use in Easy Records. AET, you'll take that. Just do that and move on. It'll be fine. Okay. If you're turning it into your tax person, your tax man may say, oh, we're going to do something different. That's fine. Taxes and record books are actually kind of two different things when it comes to that. When you get to the depreciation line on your application, that's going to be a negative number. That's cost to your operation, right? So that's another one of those kind of red flags. For those of you who have non-current things that are depreciating, that's going to be a negative number. So just kind of make yourself a note to look for that. All right. Here's an example on an application of some some current assets. So you can see this is a beef and swine type of student. They had some crops as well. This was a diversified ag production. If the student had just been in beef, this would be thrown out. Why? Because we've got swine stuff on here, and we've got some pieces and parts to their hay equipment. So you got to make sure that those are pertaining to your project. But all of these would be examples of current assets, and then you put how many that you have and what your value is when you're inventorying things as of December 31st. Okay. Now the non-current page looks like this. So you would put on there what you had, you put how much you bought it for, acquired it for, how much depreciation you've claimed to date, and that minus that equals this. This is the one that needs to match your financial statements and such. So you might have to adjust slightly some numbers in here manually to make that work by a few dollars, and that's okay. Right? But that's how that looks. All right. Let's move forward to learning outcomes and efficiencies. We'll get off of the financial thing just a little bit. So you're going to have a chance to tell how great you are at your project, and this is the page that you tell that story on. And so you put what it is that you're so wonderful at, and this is where we need to be very careful. We're going to watch the year here, this right here, no 2017. None. All right, 2016, 2015, 2014, and, way back from here. 98. Okay, so in 2000, when you were 2, Grandpa gave you something. There's no 2000, 2002 stuff here for you guys. That's way too early. That's going to get you thrown out as well. All right, so watch your year here. So you put your year that you kind of started doing whatever it is, the year that you have your most recent level at. What level was I at before? What am I at now? And a description of why that's important. So this particular student, I put this on here. This was my student who actually won ag sales last year. He was a national finalist the year before in poultry, and so that's from that application. But in 2012, you see that he was spending 9.04 hours per week, and it went down in 2014 to 7.62. You may say, well, gosh, that doesn't look like he's being so involved in this project. That's a bad thing. But over here, it may be a good place to explain something that initially doesn't look desirable for your application. So he became more efficient. Well, good for him. Efficiency is always good. He explained how he did that. And so over here is not always going to be about, oh, my gosh, I got I increase, it might be, well, I decrease because I'm more efficient or whatever. This is your chance to tell your story about how that impacted your program. Okay, so number of chickens purchased, that went up, and he talked about different supplies and so on, such, and you can look at that. We've got that. All right, so I put this one in here because size doesn't necessarily matter. We get hung up on that in Illinois a lot. We think we have to be the biggest person in that particular enterprise. That is absolutely not true. Just not true. It matters how involved you are in your project and the managerial decisions that you're ready to make. So this particular student was a national finalist this last year in diversified crop production. I mean, the big crop area. Guess how many acres he had? 40. That's it, 40. And I put his application in here because he was so precise. He was so about numbers and percents and improving his project. He was a national finalist in 40 acres, right? So you can do it too. No matter how big or small you are, it's about how you tell your story. So he's got his beginning and ending levels on his soybeans, but look at that. He told about storage costs, percent increase in profit. He's talking about what excessive moisture would cost him. Talk about going break even. What is my break even? Profits, profit margins, etc. Dollars, cents, percent, figures, facts. That's what you need to have in there. Right? It's not about the size. It's about analyzing your situation and doing what you can to make it better. Right? So I always tell the students, it would be hard to have too many facts and figures in there. Right? Amy? All right. Let's talk about a few hints on skills that you're going to put in there. There are two different areas of skills that you're going to identify on your application. One is in your primary pathway. Those are, like if I have horses, that's in the animal pathway, right? So it's directly relating to your project. Okay, Amy. Be very, very specific here as well. Give plenty of detail. And you're going to click down and pick from different skills that they have. I would recommend only using a given skill once unless you have some special circumstance or something that is completely different to talk about. I don't even know if I have a good example of this. Maybe something about animal nutrition, and you talk about your feed rations once, and then maybe if there was something completely and totally, maybe some kind of research that you did along with that with your project, and you could use that to tell that story. Don't think, well, I said my roughage is this way and my content is this way. That's redundant, and you don't want to do that. All right. Time management as a challenge or organizational skill, surely we can think of something better than that. I would encourage you to probably think beyond that in terms of skills that you want to identify. Anyone can pick that one. So move on to the next level and do something beyond that.
Oh, and I would encourage you to think like Diane and students and be thinking about efficiency. Regardless of what your project is, we all have efficiencies. And so even if it is time management, say it in more about your efficiency in getting those things accomplished and how that affects your entire operation, whatever your FAE is. So be thinking about those efficiency factors that are within your project that you don't always think of it that way.
So instead of saying that you became more efficient with your project, how about maybe you saved X amount of dollars in fuel by planning out your delivery routes more efficiently. You saved X number of miles. You shaved 9% off of your annual mileage rate, whatever it is. Okay, so that's a completely different way of talking about kind of the same thing. This is a student, again, he chose these performance indicators. He talked about fertilization. He told about pounds. He told about talked about some technology. If you got some technology, be sure that you get a technology thing in there. Here we can reference other things besides pictures, such as a personal page that we're going to talk about. Very specific in everything that we had there. And I think that just worked really well for him, and it will for you too if you take the time to calculate the numbers. Lots of number crunching and calculating goes into stuff. You may not realize that at first, but it does. Okay, here's one. This was from a young lady who competed in environmental sciences and natural resources. She was a national finalist this last year. And these would be things beyond, you're going to pick things, your 5 best skills, and then in your pathway, and then you pick other ones that are not in your pathway that you also used in your project. So she's using meteorology things here, talking about rainfall, and she went back and dug up what Illinois' annual rainfall was and what we had and what % above average that was, so on and so forth. So I didn't want to use all function types of examples with that, but again, be very specific with numbers and percents and so on. Okay, so outside, the supporting skills, those are the ones outside of your main pathway. So if you're an animal, you might choose a business one and talk about some business decisions, or you might talk about something about basically people skills and dealing with customers, those sorts of things that are supplementary to your project. Those are important also, and those will be 6 through 10. So this is our poultry kit, back to our poultry kit again. So he was raising chickens, but this has to do with food products and processing. This has to do with financial information and how he deals with that, accounting skills, filing, and so on. All right. And this is some more examples. You can reference this particular PowerPoint and read through those maybe in more detail if you would like. I want to have plenty of time for questions and answers. All right, placement people. When you're talking about your experiences, list them in the same order each year. So, for example, if I am placement in, what do we have in here in placement? All right. Give me 3 things that you have as experiences that you would put in this. This is Jennifer. So 3 things you do with your project. Speaking with customers on the phone. Advertising in the community. Managing social media. All right, so we've got that order. She puts those down in her first year. So then when she goes to her second year of her SAE, she did not put social media first, and then advertising in the community, and then whatever the first one was. Put them in the same order so the judges can look at the first one, and kind of see how that has happened. And then the second one is the same, and the third one is the same. Now, you may add things as you go along, or you may delete things, but if they're the same sorts of things that you do, and you do it repeatedly each year, put them in the same order, put the year, give the specifics, just a lot easier to process that way.
It also demonstrates the growth and responsibility you have. It's very easy to track and see that as a judge, that in 2012 you did these 3 things, and then same order of the next year, oh, and then we added another one. And so it's just making it very easy for the judge to see that you're growing and building in your experience.
All right. For your placement people, you have a skills page, and you're going to have your contributions to success. So think of it as this is the skill, this is the impact that it had on my project. So we're preventing animal diseases, and we talked about sick animals, treating them, knowledge of diseases, so on and so forth. That's how that improves my project. So skills and then impact. All right, let's talk about pictures just a little bit. they're not, if you look at the rubric, you're not going to see a bunch of points dedicated to pictures, but they're still so important. So I have some pictures here. Now, I want you to look at this one, and we're going to assume that I didn't just steal this from, Shutterstock, so ignore those. This is a fiber and oil placement project. Assume that you can see the driver more clearly, and that is the proficiency candidate. What's wrong with this picture? It's wheat. Wheat is grain production. It is not fiber and oil crops. We had a situation similar to this. Beautiful picture. The student was harvesting some soybeans in the picture using placement. Excellent application. We wanted it to be a finalist. It's still with substantial discounts for that. Scored well enough to be a finalist. The review table said, it's cool, but it's not a finalist. So just a little thing like that could mean kind of the kiss of death for you in terms of being a finalist. Be very clear about that. What's wrong with this picture? This is a mechanic picture. Wear the safety glasses for Pete's sake. Long sleeves, if it was my student, I would even make them wear long sleeves. All right? How about the next one, please? Okay. This is a small animal SAE. In fact, this is a cat owned by one of my students. What's wrong with this thing?
They're not in it.
Where is the student? What is their role in this? It's a lovely cat. And I didn't even get the picture from her. I took it off of their family's website just for this. So, you don't want to steal it from a website. But the student needs to be in the picture clearly, like face and all, not the back of them and say, oh, well, this is Mrs. Lushin. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. You need to be actively involved with your project, doing something that then you can talk about in the caption. And when you talk about it in the caption, there again, talk about the managerial skills, decision-making. Your caption should even have some numbers and dollars or percents and whatnot in them, okay? Here's another one. This is the young man I was telling you about with his 40 acres. Isn't that a nice picture? Hey, he's crop production, so there he is with his John Deere tractor. What's wrong with this picture? Oh, he's not doing anything. Yeah. Here I am in my field is not going to get you additional points and get the judges wrapped around your project. Here's the better one. This is the same student, same project. Now, what about that picture? Okay, there he is, got the planner, check in, see if it's planting correctly, population, blah, blah, blah. All right, ooh, and as a bonus, when we're taking these, look at, we've got an FFA shirt on. That's nice. You can stage those. My students hate me coming out to do pictures for National Proficiency application. In fact, one of them who had probably disliked it the most sitting right back there because, I mean, like this kid, I'd be like, all right, get in place, and then I would go up and straighten his shirt and get the FFA like nice. See how nice that looks there? They can see that. All right, just make sure those pictures are as good as you can possibly make them. And then the caption, again, read the description. Now, here I am with my planter checking this. I can see this. You thank you. Don't waste the amount of space and words to say, here I am. Anyone who's competent enough to be a judge can see that, yes, there you are. All right, so just get right into, planting population is critical to the start of a bumper crop. I want this population, blah, blah, blah. All right. So a couple other photo pointers, we probably talked about it. Make sure it's directly related to your SAE. If you're in crops, you got to show that one. Don't get wrapped up in a bunch of mechanical pictures. I would not recommend maybe more than one picture of calibrating equipment in the shop kind of thing. That's what it sounds like. I mean, yeah, I know it's important to a crops project, but again, don't muddy the waters, all right? Make sure it's this project, all safety requirements, make sure that there's no doubt about all of that ongoing, and you got to be in the picture with your project. Okay. So, talking about captions just a little bit, make sure you use the space that they give you. that you put some factual information in there. If you already talked earlier in your application about planting population, for example, with that young man, then I would talk about planting depth, soil temperature for good emergence, something like that. Talk about something that hasn't already been discussed in the application. You only get however many pages it is. Don't repeat yourself. Don't duplicate things. Use that space to tell another part of your story. FFA apparel, we already said that's good. Here, this is kind of an oldie, but this is a photo caption. The student is working with a veterinarian, ultrasounding cattle. He talks about number of days of gestation, how accurate it has been, and how it helps with managing their enterprise. Okay. Let's talk about a personal page. This is one of those things where we just really don't know quite what to do sometimes. First of all, don't duplicate anything you've already talked about in your application. It's to tell more of your story. So do something that we haven't done before. Amy, you want to talk about this? It's been a while ago. This is actually Amy. I know I can get by with putting some of her personal information up here. She was in swine production, and so we have her card. We have some exhibition skeleton stuff. We have the fact that she had a validated herd to talk about health, and then a cut sheet here for marketing. None of that was talked about earlier in the application, really. You can scan different articles that you may have with your project, then paste them into this, just a Word document, paste it in, and then do a text box and do a little caption. There's all kinds of different stuff that you see at National, but I think the format works pretty well. Take some time to make it good images, make it look and that sort of thing. Right. Maybe things that didn't fit somewhere else in the application very well but are important to your program, put them here. And then if you are a national candidate, you've dangled that carrot and they'll ask you about it, which is something that you want.
One of the things, too, and this is not the best, when I'm giving this advice, I'm not telling you that a judge is going to leave your application sitting behind, but this is what's going to pop. This is what has the most potential to pop for you, because the application, the covers all look the same, the boxes on it, the size of the boxes, all of that looks the same from one kid to the next until they get back to your photos. This is a one piece where you can really pop, and as like Amy said, then they came back and use that sheet to ask your questions in our interview. Make sure that this really says who you are. A lot of times in Illinois, we have a tendency to just make it, this is my statement, and it's just like a letter of recommendation type look and on school stationery and what you've written. Don't go that road. Even if you don't put a photo in it and add the color to it, at least put some boxes around things and make a copy of something that's from your project so that it really has the potential to pop. I would really encourage you to steer clear of just writing up a letter. This is all about, steer clear of that. Make it look something like this or similar to this.
And this is exactly right. Even the resume now is the same format for every student that wants the same. So this is your only chance at individuality and creativity. Your pictures even, they can fit in the box, and the caption has to fit in this box. So this is your chance to be you. So take advantage of it and make it something that reflects things that are unique about your project that you haven't talked about already. All right? Sorry. And I put the word stuff up there. So always use professional language. Stuff, for example, is not professional language. You're not writing your application while you're talking to your best friend on the weekend. All right, you are a young agricultural professional who is turning in your application for one of the highest awards that FFA has to offer. So convey that mindset in your application. make sure that the version number, and go ahead one more time, Amy. There's a little version number that prints down here at the bottom of the application, and it changes every time you find something that's wrong and you have to reprint it. And they'll go, oh, well, my mistake was on page 3, and I'm running out of time, so I'll just reprint page 3. It has now a different version number than the rest of your application.
Oh, it gets thrown out.
It's out.
Not even, it's out.
All right.
Nothing to do about it.
So it is absolutely no room for negotiation. It's out. So make sure your version number is the same on each and every piece. All right? Be very specific. We've hammered on that and preached on that. Make sure that you're specific dollars, hours, cents, etc. Don't duplicate anything. Use, as many different stories as you can about your project and to brag about all the different components of the great things that you do. Otherwise, you wouldn't be sitting here as a state winner. Remember, only this project. If there was anything that I took away from judging at National, it was the intense desire for students to commingle and muddy the waters with that. And are these your horses, right? Well, we had a lot of that with the equine because a lot of times you work for this stable to board your horse here, and they wanted to talk about, I was judging equine placement, but they wanted to talk about how wonderful their horse was. Don't do that. All right, advisors in the room, or students if your advisor isn't here. So don't try to include specifics of the operation in our advisor letter. We might inadvertently say something that contradicts what the student has in there. Then the judge is going to be, it really isn't. Okay, we don't want that. So the candidate knows the project. Let them tell the story with dollars and hours and percents and numbers and years and so on. And talk about how great students they are and how they develop their project and their program and their ownership in it and so on. When you're getting ready to just get this thing wrapped up, I know you'll be ready to celebrate by then. But use a nice, heavy white paper for the application. You can use a heavier paper for your pictures. Don't do the whole thing on cardstock. Right? And don't do the whole thing on like that glossy photo paper stuff. Don't do that. All right? The judges have to be able to turn the pages and read the papers and maneuver things around. Just a nice, heavy white copy paper for the application, and then kind of a medium weight cardstocky photo thing for your pictures and your just like supplemental collage thing that we showed you. We did that on photo paper, but don't put the whole thing on all that heavy stuff. All right, use your resources. So if you have not gone to this particular page, now, you know what, I'm going to come back to this. Amy, what else do I have here? I should have, if it'll, oh, there we go. So as you get working on this, Mrs. Bunselmeyer is your, like, go-to person in the state office. And so, obviously, I'm sure you have her contact information. If for some reason you would like to get a hold of me, I'm more than happy to answer questions, although Ms. Bunselmeyer is the person who gets the final say in things. But if you want something looked at or have a question, my contact email, my phone number, you can text me, call me, whatever. I'm more than happy to try and help you. I'm pretty passionate about FAE-based awards for FFA, and I'm happy to help students do the best that you can. I think that's the last one now, Amy.
So in reference to this, Diana and some other teachers and some of our national finalists from last year have basically formed a committee for us that will review your applications. So we've asked you to have your applications done by May 26th, and then you send us that PDF. When you send me that PDF, I drop that in a folder, and then I can't remember, Diana's looking at a couple. I know Sue Schaefer's going to look at a couple. Amy's going to look at some. Deborah Cordy's going to look at some. Some of our national finalists from last year are going to look at them. And so we have asked them to look at them. and give you these points that we're looking for. Things that we'll do for sure at the state office. We'll check to make sure all version numbers are right. We'll check to make sure all signatures are there. We'll check all of those parameters to make sure that, the basics, you have all your photo captions, you have your supplemental page. We'll make sure all the pieces of it are there as well. But what our goal is if you get it to us by May 26th, we'll share those folders with our review team, and then the review team has until I think June 20th, June 21st, something like that, right when IVAT conference starts, to get that information, that feedback to you. And then we're asking you from the 20th of June to July 1, get them back to us. And July 1 is when we need the actual hard copy printed off with signatures sent to us, because it is the entire application that has to get mailed in from our office. Once they come to our office, like I said, we will check all of those pieces, version numbers, photos, pages, signature pages, and then we will put them in folders that are the clear top, blue cover says national application. We'll put them in all those folders. We buy new ones for that every year, and then we send that package off. And that's why we have to have it by July 1, because it's due to National FFA by July 10th. And because it has to be shipped and mailed, we want to make sure we have plenty of time for that. So that's how that process will work after that. If you have questions for clarification pieces, like Diana said, don't hesitate to email me, call me, text me. We have a great relationship with National FFA. They're very helpful in getting that information to us. Brett Ovens, this year from National FFA, is actually going to come to IVAT on Wednesday. And really, he's going to talk more to us about where does your kid fall in these different project areas. But he is also happy to answer questions that you would have about the national apps. But because I've had to learn the hard way with a couple apps from last year, I make sure we check with National on about everything, especially because there is so much to know. So don't hesitate to let me know. We will get a hold of National. They will get back to us, and our review team will try to give you as much great feedback as possible. So that's a little bit on that time frame, parameters, who all is looking at the app. Do you have any questions about any of that? Okay.
All right, a couple other things I wanted to quick point out, too. Speaking of National FFA, it's not their goal to throw out your application. It's their goal to find the best candidate that fits in that area. And if for some reason they don't think you fit in that area, then we have trouble. So it's best to head off and use that to begin with. This is actually the live page now, so Amy pulled this across. If you have not gone here, I would highly encourage that you do this. I went to FFA.org, and then you go to participate, and go to awards and degrees, and then you would go down to Proficiency Awards, and there is just a plethora of stuff, that word I shouldn't use, plethora of good things for you. There is a handbook about the Proficiency Awards. There are the rubrics. This is where I got the things that I handed to you today. So here are some frequently asked questions. Here's some troubleshooting tips. They have, look on this one here, example applications. They have sample applications of apps that they put up there. These are real applications because we've had some of our students up there in years past. Real applications that may or may not be winners, but they're ones that exemplify that project area. I would encourage you to look at them, even if you're like small. Let's say that you're swine. Swine isn't up here. Let's say you're swine entrepreneurship, and you're like, oh, well, there's nothing for me. Well, yes, there is, because you should be looking at all of the entrepreneurship applications and see what those students did and glean ideas from those as well. So use the resources. There's just a scat of information up there. That is up there, and you could easily spend a couple days just researching things before you really tear into finishing up your application. So here's some best practices for applications. They try and guide you along. Use those resources to help you. Don't leave these resources untapped when it comes to trying to make your application the best that you can, because being a national finalist is a big deal. there's a lot of great opportunities. Being a national winner is a great accomplishment. You're on your way. Just the next step is your application. So we want you to be successful with that.
The biggest thing I'll reinforce on this is the rubric. The rubric, they follow it. They tell the judges to follow it. The judges are trained on this is how you follow this rubric. Use that rubric in every answer you answer on your app. Refer back to what the rubric says, how it should be answered. And it gives you examples of this is what would score high, this is what would score medium, this is what would score low. Please refer back to that. That will be the most helpful. Diana also mentioned we will do a day this fall, and we're going to do it at the IAA building in Bloomington. So the Farm Bureau headquarters, they've agreed to give us a various number of rooms for us to do practice interviews for any national finalists we have, any state public speakers we have, job interview, anything where you're going to be judged by a panel of judges in a presentation format. That will be our national convention preparation day. So be on the lookout for that if you are a national finalist or if you fall in any of the other categories for being a state winner. We've agreed, their alumni affiliate has agreed to be judges for us. They're going to get us half a dozen rooms for us to be able to facilitate that day. So we will have a national convention prep day this fall. We don't have a date lined out, but we have that all in the works. So be ready if you are a national finalist.
If you are, I would highly recommend that you take advantage of that because there are tips and things or maybe just some information that maybe you weren't aware of. So last year we had a student come to the practice thing who was not aware that you need to prepare a 2-minute introduction, and they said, oh my goodness, I didn't know this. Well, so they did a bang-up job of it. And
national winner.
And won, yeah. But that would have been a horrible surprise to get to show up at national. So just try and carve that into your schedule.
Yeah. Because Mr. Dry and Mr. Kraft both come back and help with that, and Mr. Kraft served on the national proficiency this process for years. So his experience and knowledge with this is very, very in-depth, and so he is very helpful with that. And then Mr. Dry did the STARS for agribusiness for years. And so both of them have a lot of experience at the national level with this, and they both agreed to come back and help with that day as well. So we've got good experts.
He was really impressed with the process. And we got that. He said it was only some of them that were outside the box. That was so we're out of here and find statement and wasn't a great person. When she does her application, like it says, applying the best management practices, talk about herself applying those practices while she's working, or does she say, our form of these practices might similar working? I guess she could be like, I don't apply it to an entrepreneurship project that she does work for her family.
She needs to work as that blank form, and that form will like to proceed.
Help my employer be more efficient. Okay. And I would not spend a lot of time. I wouldn't even get out per se at your employer as your family. If I don't know what's the name of the farm or what, it's ABC Pork Farm, then it's ABC Pork Farm. It's my dad, my uncle, whatever. Don't drop that. They're your employer. Refer to them as your employer, the name of the farm, and your skills that you do that make your employer to value as an employee.
Don't call it my or our. That is
right. Yeah.
Yes. Or
the
my dad.
Skills are hers.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Any of the things that
When the application, we need to go back and put those in the book.
Great question. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, I kind of a record book person. Your record book is not going to be part of it. If you're a national finalist, you'll take your record book with you to national, and you will, we've already dealt with it. You will walk in for your interview, and you will place your record book upon the table, and that is as far as it's going to go. The judges will be told they cannot ask to see your records. They cannot look at your records. You got to take it with you, and it's to be used for your reference in case you forget something in your interview. I coach my own students, and this isn't really about interviews, but make sure you got a nice picture on the front. Collage of pictures on the front is good. Make sure you place it so that it's facing the judges and not, like upside down this way. That doesn't do any good. And there it is. But it's all about the interview. So you can put whatever you want in the book. If you need to make revisions, just make them on the application and move forward.
And we can't stress enough that the application is the only thing that will get you to be a national finalist. And then even in the interview, you're totally going to sell yourself because Diana's right. Illinois students are very prepared for the interview because you've had so many interviews up until this point in your FFA career. But there's still the points from the app are still counted in the final results. So we cannot tell you enough how important this application is. And we're not saying that's what we personally believe. That's why I don't want people to think that I think an application is what makes your students successful or their project. I am saying the application is the only way to become a national finalist, and the points that it has in the interview and the end result is huge. And so, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to really focus on the application and sell yourself. And I know you're worth a lot more than that, but that application is the only thing that's going to get your foot in the door.
And it used to be that mathematically it was impossible to lose the interview. It was mathematically impossible to win the interview and not be the winner. That's not true anymore. It'll be a tie, and the tie is broken by the application. So it's even more important now than it was 5 years ago.
So, as a judge, when you're looking for growth, how do you find that?
Well, growth is the interesting thing. You can grow in size of your enterprise, but more importantly, you can grow in your responsibilities, your managerial decisions, and those sorts of things. So you can grow in a number of different ways. And I don't think there's any one right or wrong thing, and each person's program is so different from each other that, it's not going to be the same. So you swine entrepreneurship, so it's nice if you got more fixed at the end than you did at the beginning, obviously, but your skills and managerial things are probably even more important to grow.
So this goes back to Diana when she talked about the efficiency factors and how her students voted up. You never saw that she said, this year I had 10 acres and this year I had 20. He didn't do that. He wrote about other efficiency factors to show the strength of the project in other ways. So if you do have a decline in like what you own or how many you have, or don't emphasize that on the efficiency, emphasize the things that do show growth or display growth in that way. And it's not that you can deceive them. They're going to tell when they look at your inventory you went from 25 head to 15, but if you talk about it in your efficiency factors, your growth factors, that's hopefully going to sound.
Well, and
on that page.
Specific example with a student, my 40 acre kid, he started out with 40 acres. And that's all he ever got to farm because there wasn't an opportunity. He added a plot on another grandfather's loan. That's the only physical growth in acres that he had. So it's perfectly conceivable that you could do very well with not having starting with 10 pigs and finishing with 1,000 pigs. That's not what it's about. Yeah. I would do it. Amy, I see that you want to talk about that? Yeah. Paragraphs and lines and reading through paragraphs. Very much list bullets. No matter whether you have a lot or a little. It needs to be quick, easy to read. Yeah. And within that list, even if you have room for quite a few, you put your best ones. If you're talk about Section Leadership Training School and going to Washington Leadership Conference. Leadership Conference, WLC should be up here, and Section LCS should be way down there.
Prioritize based off of level of.
I would national, state. I would prioritize them by level, national, state, local. Because you can. That would be fine.
What it is more important than what year you got. Right, I was going to say, that's one thing, that what it is more important than the year. The year has very little meaning, really, to them, as far as they just want to know what you've accomplished, what you've achieved. Yeah, I'm sorry, what was that? Probably. Yeah. I need to probably look at that. Let me pull up and have one.
Amy's pulling up. It's going to be probably clear on the end, Amy. It's clear on that. We're going to look and see what we've got on the sample app here. Okay, so here's the go on down to, so in their example, they're showing a year and then involvement is going. Yeah,
it drops it in, doesn't it?
I don't remember.
I don't remember it. Don't let me understand.
Amy's going to pull up a different one for us. Maybe, And don't worry if you do yours and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to put my information out there for all to see. They do ask you first, and they do remove identifying information. Yeah, they actually have it by year. It's more important to put your big stuff. This is not how I would do it. Try one more. Try the equine.
No, it doesn't drop the year in.
Okay. All right. I'm kidding. Oh, well. Other questions? Well, thank you very much for spending the last nearly hour and a half or so with us. If you have specific questions, I don't know how long Mrs. Bunzmeyer has allocated to be here, but we are here for a while. So Amy or I, Mrs. Bunzmeyer, can try and field any individual questions that you have. But hopefully when you walk away from here, you're like, okay, I have a clear vision of what it is that I need to do. And probably all of you should be thinking of, I'm going to have to do some number crunching. I'm going to have to break out that calculator. I've got to go back and dig in the record book and find what I was at the beginning and what I was at the end and calculate. In fact, we had our staff teacher double-checking numbers for us in terms of percent growth and all that kind of thing. Just lots of that figuring. It takes a while, but it'll be worth it. So worth it.
So for all you teachers, I did share with you Diana's PowerPoint this morning. So if you want to refer back to that, of course, the webinar, we are going to post this on our YouTube AgEd link. So if you need to refer back to that, but the PowerPoint's there, and then of course all the resources on National FFA are super helpful. And it looks like I don't have any questions from the webinar side, so we're going to go ahead and log off. All right. Thank you guys all very much.